I want to bring into the conversation here Robert Gibbs. He is a former Obama administration aide, as well as Matthew Dowd, who is with us right now as well. Robert Gibbs, by the way, is former press secretary in the White House, and then Matthew Dowd worked in the Bush-Cheney administration. Matthew, let me start with you and take us back to 2016. I mean, that is what the prosecutor is doing right now before the jurors. And just the setting of what they're calling this conspiracy to conceal this information from the voters. What do you think this was? What was happening inside the Trump campaign at the time that all of this was reportedly going on behind the scenes?
Well, I can't speak from experience of having gone through a candidate with this, and I don't think Robert can either, having this sort of negatives associated with a candidate. We had other things we had to deal with, never something like this, and never catch and kill and all those other things that are associated with this. My guess is, and this is a guess, but I think it's pretty informed, is there was so much incoming, the Access Hollywood tape, all the things associated with it, and then Donald Trump and his campaign's worry in a very close election against Hillary Clinton that this could be meaningful, and it probably would have been meaningful. If this had come out before Election Day, my guess is that election was so close, this would have changed enough minds or demotivated people on the Republican side that it would have made a difference in the election. So they made a calculated effort, and we'll find out if it was illegal or legal by whether or not he's convicted by a jury. They made a calculated effort to take a legal chance to hide information or to seek to hide information so they could win the election so it wouldn't come out. That is, I'm sure, what the calculus was.
I mean, Robert, I'm just wondering your thoughts. Very few political candidates are 100% pure without any kind of issues. Very few. But in this case, Robert, there was a lot to the catch and kill plan. I mean, especially after the Access Hollywood tape. What do you think this would have influenced?
Well, I think Matthew hit it on the head. I mean, look, every campaign starts knowing that you've got vulnerabilities, and you have a research department that documents those vulnerabilities. They may be bad votes. They may be bad loans. You may look at your opponent and say, oh, we found out they didn't pay their property taxes on time. But nothing, of course, rises to the level of what is described and what has happened here. But I think Matthew's right in that, this would have really depressed Republican votes just at the point in which you are trying to turn out your base of supporters to make sure they vote. And I think just a few thousand in a few states would have tipped this election. They're cognizant of that. They've probably talked to people about the impact of what this would have. Undoubtedly, throughout the campaign, they talked about it and had to have a plan to make sure it just simply didn't come out so that those evangelical voters or whatnot that saw Donald Trump as their candidate didn't get depressed in not voting right at Election Day.
Thank you so much, Matthew Dowd and Robert Gibbs. Let's go back to our Vaughn Hilliard again at the courthouse with more reporting from inside the courtroom during opening statements. Vaughn, fill us in.
Again, there are a lot of big question marks exactly what the prosecution was going to try to argue about Donald Trump's knowledge ahead of the 2016 election about the payment to Stormy Daniels. And we can tell you now, based off of prosecutor Matthew Colangelo's opening statements inside of the courtroom, just literally in the last 60 seconds, he directly says that Michael Cohen had discussed with Trump the Stormy Daniels story in October of 2016, in that those conversations led to Donald Trump being frustrated in acknowledging that he did not want the story to come out, that it would be devastating to his campaign. For timing purposes, this was just days after the Access Hollywood tape came out in October of 2016, when, of course, there were Republican allies, the RNC, that were concerned about Donald Trump going on to be the nominee over the course of that month. And Donald Trump, what the prosecutors are looking to outline to the jury, is that he was made aware from Michael Cohen, in the editor-in-chief of the National Enquirer, that an additional woman, Stormy Stormy Daniels had a story that she wanted to be published in Cell, and the National Enquirer was in discussions with Stormy Daniels about potentially being the one to buy her story. But in the intervening days, the prosecution says that Michael Cohen was put in touch via the National Enquirer with Stormy Daniels and her attorney, and that is when the $130,000 payment was arranged. But I want to be very clear what is significant in the last 2 minutes about this is that the prosecution is explicitly telling the jury that they will present to them in the upcoming weeks that Donald Trump was intimately aware of the Stormy Daniels story in October 2016 and the payment to silence her from having that story go public.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.